All right, now that Marcus has finished his Chick-fil-A right in front of us, as the rest of us sit here hungry, we can begin the Temple Daily Telegram Sports Podcast. It is now week 7. Back with you, Josh Weaver. Daniel Zepeda is closest to me this week, so I'll point to him first. And then Greg Lilly's over there.
Hello.
And as I said, Marcus.
Hi there.
Closing out his Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, almost done.
Yes. All right, let's get into it. We have a handful of area teams actually with an open week this week, but still some pretty good matchups to discuss. The Thursday night game in District 12-6A is Waco at Harker Heights. Also in 12-6A this week, Killeen at Temple, Midway at Copperas Cove, and Ellison at Shoemaker. In 5-4A1, Gatesville is visiting Brownwood. In 10-3A1, Troy at Academy, Cameron Yo at Gerald, and Lago Vista at Rockdale. That matchup is probably the highlight in that trio there. Good one in 8-2A1, Bruce-Oletti at Italy. Both teams are 2-0 going into that one. And Bruce-Oletti's looked really good over the last few weeks. So, and I think this might be a little bit of a payback game for the Eagles. I think Italy won a close one last year. But we'll discuss that one. In 13-2A1, Holland at Marlin. Holland just continues to roll. They beat Thorndale pretty handily last week. A lot wider of a spread than I think maybe we thought. But certainly a convincing one and a good one for Holland there. 13-2A2, Bremont at Bartlett. Iola at Granger. And in TAP's 6-man Division 2, District 2, Bracken Christian at Holy Trinity Catholic. And in non-district action, Buckholz at Prairie Lee. Idle this week, Belton, Salado, Rogers, Moody, and Rosebud Law. Central Texas Christian, I guess I should mention, they actually had their open week last week. It was switched, so they're going to be playing Dallas Covenant this week. So there's that. We'll just get right to it and start with let's recap Temple Belton a little bit, and we'll talk about the Wildcats' next matchup.
Has that first half ended yet?
Yeah, right. Well, that's always going to happen when those two teams meet. It just kind of seems like the games are going to last forever. And it looked like this year was going to be another close one for the first quarter and a half at least. Those guys were trading punches, not literally scoring punches, touchdowns. It was actually a very clean game. I was very impressed once again with the way those teams handled themselves.
It's not a very chippy rivalry.
No, there's some trash talking. Yeah. We saw a couple penalties for that, but I mean, it was just a good hard-fought game all around.
Yeah.
But it was 31-28 Temple with about 3.5 left in the first half, and the Wildcats went on to score 21 straight to close the first half, another 7 to open the third, and it was a rout, 66-34, the most lopsided result in the last 4 years.
I mean, yeah, it was 28 points for Temple in a span of what? 3 minutes, basically, under 3 minutes, and it went from being totally back and forth, like is team with the ball last going to win this game, and the second half was actually kind of mundane. It was like once Temple went on that big scoring streak, it was almost like both teams got content to run it and get out of there.
That very quick drive to open the third quarter from Temple, 2 plays that covered 75 yards to make it 59-28. Yeah. I mean, that pretty much took the air out of everything.
Even though Belton came back with a touchdown drive, it took them a little too long to get it. And then as banged up as Belton is, at a certain point, it was like you could tell they didn't want to get any more guys hurt than they had to. And Temple actually decided to kind of take the air out of the ball offensively. But
is that legal?
Yeah.
There was a huge investigation a couple of years ago because of that.
Where are you?
But it was. I mean, I think if you're a Belton fan, you could definitely take some big positives out of what you saw in the first half. I mean, you saw a lot of talent out of your junior quarterback, Ruben Jimenez. You saw some quick strike ability. You didn't see a whole lot of defense.
No. That's a problem for both of those teams.
Yeah.
More so for Belton this year. They're giving up way too many points and way too many yards.
But I guarantee you, even though Temple won that game by 32 points, the next day's defensive film study session was probably not a whole lot of fun because, I mean, Belton, I think I totaled it up, and like 14 of their snaps went for almost like 400 yards. It was incredible.
Yeah.
Jimenez was a big part of that. But defensively, better for Temple in the second half.
Yeah, definitely.
And better for Belton, too. But first half could not have been wilder and more action-packed.
Oh, it's certainly exciting, yeah. And to touch on a couple of things you said, Yeah, Belton definitely could be happy with that first quarter and a half, and Skidmore said, Sam Skidmore, the Belton coach, said just that after the game. Then he said, mistakes kind of mounted, injuries mounted. At some point, they had 4 linebackers out during that game who didn't return,
right?
Including their leading tackler. So
this is not like a college program that has 85 scholarships.
No, they do have good depth, but I mean, the further down you go, it gets a lot harder because guys are now in different positions where they shouldn't be. And Skidmore pointed to one of the touchdowns during that Temple streak. I think it was Anthony Jackson's 26-yard receiving touchdown.
Yeah, right.
He was wide open down the seam. There were some linebackers there who probably should have picked him up, but they were playing out of position and they weren't. They were going on the fly there. And then Coach Stewart, I mean, he was definitely happy to get another win. And he said afterward, it's great that our offense can put up that many points, but we do not want to give up that many on a regular basis in the first half.
He never's in a very good mood, win or lose, after they give up any kind of a lot of points, a lot of yards. That's just he'd always rather win than lose, but anytime his team gives up 30 plus and over 400 yards, he's not going to be jumping for joy. So there's been a lot of talk over there this week about shoring up the defense, whether that means rotating some kids in new positions, giving some younger guys a shot, just because this Killeen team that they're about to play, you look at the record, 1-5, 1-3, they're not having a great season, but you still got some playmakers on that side. Kadarius Marshall is arguably one of the very best players in the district, even though he's on a not so great team this year. So they know he's dangerous. James Terry is a good quarterback. Now, Killeen's had a terrible year defensively.
Yeah.
By my math, they gave up something like 690 yards to Shoemaker last week, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So Temple, I mean, if their offense keeps doing what they're doing with Quentin Johnston, A.J. McDuffie's an emerging receiver, running backs, Howard, Jackson, Vance Willis running and throwing, playing very clean football right now, Temple's going to put up a lot of points over, probably the rest of its schedule, except for maybe Midway. We'll see. But
I mean, based on what you've been talking about in this podcast and then through your notebook and your game stories, I mean, it sounds like Temple's offense has kind of been working its way through this beginning part of the season. Kind of slow starts, to some games and picking it up as it goes on. I mean, it was pretty impressive what they did in that first half and early in that third quarter against Belton. I mean, Vance Willis looked really good at quarterback.
He had some
pretty good passes in there. I mean, he just dropped in some dimes that were pretty impressive.
He did, and once you get Quentin Johnston going on one side, everybody knows what he can do. You got A.J. McDuffie showing some pretty good playmaking ability, 2 fade passes in the back of the end zone. And then, I mean, when Montavian Carlisle's basically your number 3 receiver now, that's pretty good setup. And then the one thing we haven't mentioned is Temple's offensive line, I think, took control of that game. Willis wasn't hit very often. There were running lanes. Those guys kind of asserted themselves. So I think Temple's going to follow that formula from here on out. They're going to mix in the different backs, throw it around the different dudes, have Willis run it, and take advantage of that line while they have those guys.
Yeah, and we've talked a little bit about 12-6A and how kind of convoluted that playoff picture might be as we move forward. It's becoming a little bit clearer now, I think. I mean, Temple and Midway again have kind of risen to the top.
People need to stop saying they have no idea who's going to make the playoffs out of this district.
We're getting. I mean, the top 2 are becoming pretty clear. The 3 and 4 spots, yes, that is crowded. That is going to be tough.
Heights jumping into the mix now.
Heights, Belton, and Ellison 2-2 going into this week. Belton is off, so that won't change.
Killeen kind of on life support.
Yeah, Shoemaker at 2-1. That's looking like a playoff team. The Ellison Shoemaker game this week, that's a big one.
Yeah.
Not only for those 2 teams, but for the other teams trying to get in. It's a big one for Belton. Belton still has to play Ellison coming up. They've already lost to Shoemaker.
And if you were someone like Belton, at this point you might just assume Shoemaker go ahead and beat everybody that's left on the schedule. You hand Ellison a loss, beat whoever else might be in the mix, because it looks like Shoemaker, if it just keeps playing this quality of football, it's on the way to the playoffs.
And the Shoemaker-Ellison matchup is Shoemaker's got the top offense in the district, and Ellison, I believe, as far as yards allowed, has the top defense in the district. So that'll be a good one. But as I mentioned, Tigers are off this week. They're going to try to get healthy. They should have some key guys back on offense, including receiver DeMonte Smith, which will help Jimenez, who's actually looked pretty good in the absence of a bunch of different receivers. They'll have a couple of those linebackers come back as well. So that's kind of what Skidmore and Belton are trying to do this week is get healthy, and they got some big games coming up. Colleen after the break, Ellison, Waco, and Midway to close out the year. So, they need 3 of those.
Right.
To probably assure themselves a playoff spot. A hiccup along the way to either Killeen, Ellison, or Waco, that's going to cause some problems. But
I'll tell you, if you're a Belton fan, I mean, you have to be pretty excited about Jimenez as a quarterback for the rest of this year and next year. He kind of looks the part. He showed the speed on the first touchdown run against
speed, and
the arm. And he did throw a couple picks.
His first since the season opening game.
Right.
So.
Right. He showed the arm. He did get picked off twice by Roman Jackson, and they both ended up being key picks. I mean, one became a touchdown off the lateral, but when you just look at, you always want a guy who can run, who can throw. He does it both, and he's got at least about 15 games left as the quarterback there if he stays healthy. So he's an impressive dude.
Yeah, definitely something to look forward to there. And, the receivers that they're playing, they're all pretty young at this point. Smith is a senior, but some of the guys who've kind of filled in are younger guys, so they're getting some experience
and to be
with
honest,
their quarterback.
Physically, when you're looking at them from the press box angle,
they look young.
They look like JV players.
Yeah.
And, some high school kids are skinny, most of them to begin with, but they look like guys who could still be getting some more seasoning on the lower level, but Battlefield promotions, they're Friday Night Lights are way more important than Thursday, night cricket. So,
right.
Of course, we had a lot of Friday night crickets too. There,
too many. Daniel was trying to combat one just before we started here.
It's an epidemic.
Yeah, it was really bad.
They were fierce out of Belton.
Oh, I've never.
Every light pole was.
They show up this time of year all the time, but that was exceptionally just agreed. There were just way too many.
As long as they don't show up in the background of our podcast.
Oh, I know.
If that means nobody's listening.
Right.
Well, they're already there.
Yes.
Ooh. Well, 10-3-A-1, 3 matchups. This kind of separation time, I think, in that district. Troy at Academy, Yo at Gerald, Lago Vista at Rockdale. Rockdale can do some other teams in the district a favor by beating Lago Vista this week. Academy is one of them. The Bees have their hands full with Troy this week. And then you kind of forget, since it seems like forever ago, but Yo's 0-1 in district. And they were out of district last week with the non-district game. So the Yeomen kind of have to start picking up some wins, and they got Gerald this week. Any thoughts on 10-3A going forward?
Well, I was just looking, and I won't mention any names, but a major newspaper about 60 miles south of us had the predicted order of finish in this district as Yo first, Troy second, Gerald third, Lago Vista fourth, and Rockdale fifth. So I'm kind of wondering how that's going to work out for their predictions, but I'm pretty sure Rockdale's not going to finish fifth.
Well, it's been quite a few years now since Rockdale's been any good in football. So. Sorry, I'm joking. Of course, Tiger fans.
Yeah, I don't know what they're watching down there, but this is why you need to be reading the Temple Daily Telegram. Anyway.
It sounds like they might have been overestimating Gerald possibly a little bit.
A little bit. I thought Gerald would be better, and they still might be.
They're 3-3, but it's just this district.
Yeah, this district's
it's a tough one.
It's a tough one.
Yeah.
Pretty sure Jeff Miller would have bet the ranch on his own team being one of the 4 playoff teams.
Right.
Yeah,
what he had bet.
We'll definitely find out how good Lago Vista is this week.
That'll be a good game.
I think what you had to say, Josh, about teams separating themselves this week is really true. Yo coming back into district play after the week off, they kind of took out some frustration on Katy St. John there with the 44-7 win, but they get right back into 10-3-A-1 with the trip to Gerald. If they play...
Which held Troy scoreless. That was a scoreless game last week in the first quarter, I think, before.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Troy.
Gerald's,
right?
I think so.
Yeah.
Gerald's kind of in desperation mode, aren't they, at 0-2?
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're good.
That's
noteworthy. But if Yo, does what it needs to do, they'll probably pick up their first win, first district win of the year. Troy at Academy, Troy I think we can all say, they'll probably, if not win the district, if they keep playing the way they will, they'll definitely make the playoffs. I think we can all agree on that. But we've kind of talked about it week after week. But as far as that 4th spot in the district, I mean, none of us were really sure coming into the year, was it going to be Academy? They got a bunch of guys that, last year was a little bit of a learning experience, but they come into their own this year, and that offense has shined at times, but the defense has struggled. Was it going to be Gerald? They have some playmakers on offense, and Josh, as you mentioned, that defense can come alive at times, so was it going to be them? I'm not sure what we thought about Lago Vista. I didn't really have...
I don't think we were thinking about Lago Vista.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have too much...
It always it always appears to be a bubble team when they're in this district.
Apparently, that newspaper you mentioned thought that they might be pretty good this year.
Yeah, they had
They always seem to be fighting
Maybe
for
about
that.
the only thing they get
fourth
right
spot.
in those predictions.
But they're looking pretty good so far. I mean, they're sitting at 5-1 overall.
Pretty solid rushing attack, I think.
Yeah,
What we've
2-0 in
Something
district.
like 500 yards against Academy last week.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, who?
3 touchdown win.
Right. So, I mean, as far as now, I mean, you've got, Troy, Rockdale, and Yo more than likely finishing the top 3 spots in that district. And I think Lago's really done a good job of separating themselves. Probably the front runners to get that 4th spot. But, yeah, that's definitely going to be the highlight this week out of that district, Lago Vista at Rockdale. Rockdale, maybe with 1, maybe 2, legitimate tests this year. I feel like they haven't had too many tough games. That's probably why they've been able to put up so many points. But also it'll be a good test to see how they do at home against a playoff caliber team and see how they respond.
And this is the start of kind of their district gauntlet too, because it's Lago Vista and then at Troy, and then they host Cameron Yo. So I mean, it's a pretty stiff 3
That's a
games
rough
coming
3
up
weeks.
for Rock.
And to be honest, that could really be in Yo's advantage, that they'll be getting Rockdale, that big rivalry game, after Rockdale's already played conceivably 2 pretty tough physical games going into that. We'll see how much they have left for the 3rd game out of that.
And Yo getting, Troy out of the way with that first week. Sure. A loss, but still.
Those rivalry games kind of tend to
Rockdale. The
adrenaline.
Yes.
Rockdale's opponents that they've beaten so far have a combined record of 3 wins and 23 losses.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's why one reason we do think this Lago team is going to be probably their first real good test. But
Well, that's how good Rockdale is. After they beat those teams, those other teams just can't recover. They just keep on losing.
that may be true.
That's how bad they
When you put up 80 points, it has a little effect.
You look at the schedule, though. I mean, Giddings, Caldwell, Lexington. You're not thinking those teams are going to be just have
last year those
a few
teams
wins
were-
between.
This is the
them,
worst Lexington team in years and years. They're usually a very solid program.
Yeah, and then you got Maynard and UTEC, which is Maynard and UTEC.
Yeah, that's tough.
They've kind of separated, but just
the other end.
in the district.
Yeah.
They're still tying their shoes, trying to figure that out.
Yeah, it'll be a good. Come on, man.
Where do we go from there? How does that?
I mean, you might be right, but it's still.
Academy injuries.
Yeah, Greg, you were mentioning some Academy insider Greg Willie with breaking news.
Breaking news.
One of the
No,
good
you
guys.
did.
Have you followed up or been?
I have not, but
Okay.
I mean, based on the stats I found from their last game, Cephas had the majority of their throws. Looked like he played the majority.
Right.
But Colin, not Colin. Who was the
Colin Moroz?
No, Ryan White.
Ryan White.
Excuse me. Yeah,
Yeah.
Ryan White, who was vying for the quarterback position last year, lost out to Cephas. He came in to pass a little bit in their last game, which is interesting because Colin Moroz was vying for the quarterback position this year. So you would think with Cephas coming
he's
out,
played quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That receiver, and he didn't have any catches or anything.
And my understanding is that Cephas is out for at least the regular season, and that Moroz also had his arm in a sling after that Lago. Because I mean, you would think if Cephas gets hurt, Moroz would go into
Moroz is
quarterback,
next
and
man
maybe
up,
he
yeah.
did. I don't know, or maybe he had already gotten hurt in that same game because we have White, conceivably the third string quarterback,
Right, yeah.
threw some passes. So you're like, that hurts him at quarterback and at receiver,
Right.
Because they've had to slide guys over. So that,
Braden Lilly's just thinking, okay, who's going to throw me the ball?
yeah, himself
Is it gonna
maybe
be
at this rate.
Paul Williams at this point? Too? No.
That's some breaking news to me. That's a tough loss for Academy if that's the case with Jerry there.
Yeah. I mean, it was their offense was, the main thing keeping them afloat in most of these games. And then if you go from your top guy to your third string, and Ryan White, I mean, he's used to their offense there. He's like I said, he was vying for that starting quarterback position last year. He's a good athlete, just didn't get the spot. So it's not like they're calling someone up from JV or someone who has no varsity experience. He's been there. He knows what it's about. You're just not getting as strong of an arm, as accurate of an arm, and just the repetitions, obviously, that you would get with Jerry Cephas, who also leads Academy in yards rushing.
Yeah. We'll see how they handle Mr. Herbachik and Sam Jones and Workman. I mean, that's
Troy stacked.
At least when Academy had the offensive weapons, you said, well, maybe we can hold Troy to 38 and beat them in a shootout. But now it's like you might not be able to score that much, and guess what? You still have to stop what Troy does, and
it doesn't make things any easier.
Troy's doing what it does very well, and you don't expect them to have too many hiccups.
No,
since they've been at it for almost it's about a year and a half with these same guys, staying hot. So bummer for Academy, but we'll see how that plays out. Real quick, Bruce Villetti at Italy. Not a lot of. I don't have a lot of background on that one, but just the Eagles at 5-1 on 2-0 in district, and these victories have been pretty convincing so far. In district, they've scored 104 and only given up 13. They're probably heading into the meat of that schedule as well. And Italy, on the other hand, they're also 2-0, 99 points for and 49 against. And Marcus, I think you were at the game last year, and it was pretty close. I think Bruce Villetti was leading that one, and Italy ended up winning. But in either way, this should be another good matchup.
Yeah, and it's going to be another good test for Bruce Villetti to see how real they are. I mean, it's coming along good. Yeah, last year, as I recall, a lot of Bruce Villetti's guys were kind of getting banged up in the end, and then their coach, J.B. Cheney, who's now down at Holland, as their defensive coordinator, which we'll talk about in a minute. Maybe not him, but on his defense. Sidetracked. Anyway, Bruce Villetti, he had some guys that were getting banged up, so by the end of that, it came down to, we could still try and win this game, or we can just let our guys go and get them healthy, because he got to the point where I can't afford to lose any more players. And so Italy had taken the lead, and I think they got the ball back. And there was still, Bruce Villetti could still stop the clock, but I think they elected not to even bother at that point. It was just a hard-fought game. And I think this is a Bruce Villetti team that has a lot of those players back still, and they're, I'm sure they remember that one, because essentially that's what cost them their playoffs.
Yeah, the area's leading rusher, Nathan Quattlebaum, and he's
a tough man.
Offense there, but
former Telegram athlete of the week.
That's it.
Hey, once
he's the reigning
athlete.
Until you pick up Friday morning's paper, which we hope
a new one. Yeah.
Who is this week's athlete of the week?
We cannot tell you.
We would not want to divulge. Still looking for a sponsor on that, by the way. If there's any businesses out there that want to sponsor area youth.
But Quattlebaum, I mean, he's just a one-man wrecking crew, honestly. I mean, he's tough to stop. He can run over you or he can run around you. Either way, he's got 1,200 yards on the season. Nowhere to go but up for him.
For sure.
And, I mean, a lot of what the Eagles do just revolves around him. So, I mean, they're going to face some tougher teams moving forward. Like you said, I think they're getting into the meat of that district. But as long as Quattlebaum's healthy and that offensive line keeps doing what they're doing, I mean, the Eagles should continue to roll, barring any hiccups.
Yeah,
they can pass the ball pretty well, too, down there. I mean, it's not just Quattlebaum. They don't have to pass the ball with him as your running back.
Well, TJ Harmon, correct? Jarman?
He's thrown some. He's like their top receiver, I think, too.
Yeah, he's kind of a do-it-all for them.
He really is. And Coach Shopping, at the beginning of the year, he told me that's kind of what they envisioned for him, one of those run the ball, catch the ball, throw the ball type players. He's kind of proved out that way.
And they're kind of similar to going back to 10-3-8-1 with Troy. I mean, part of what makes these offenses so great, you're going to know what teams are the power running teams. Troy's got Zach Robochik. They're going to run the ball all day on you. Bruce Villetti, same thing with Nathan Quattlebaum. But when they're able to open up the passing game, like Troy has done the past few weeks with Ben Presley, it just makes their offense on the ground that much more effective. And same thing with the Eagles. When they get Trapper Enzor at quarterback there rolling, hitting some guys, it just makes Quattlebaum's job that much easier because, you don't know whether to load up the box or to, play man if you're the defense. And if you keep the defense guessing, that just plays to your advantage.
For sure. Well, Marcus,
Yes, sir.
You almost transitioned to Holland like 4 minutes ago, so we might as well just fully do that.
Delayed segue.
Yes.
All right.
The Hornets handled Thorndale pretty convincingly last week, 40-13, and that was, we expected that one to be pretty close, hard-fought game, even maybe low scoring on both sides, but it was only low scoring on one side.
Yeah.
And you were there for that one. Holland 6-0 now, 2-0 in district. They got Marlin next, which got its first not only win of district but also win of the season by beating
Maybe
Rosebud Lot. But the Hornets, and we thought maybe Thrall would be the other team in that district that would give them a hard time, but then Hearn doubled them up basically last week. So
Hearn's got some playmakers.
What was your main takeaway from that game last week for Holland?
Holland's defense is just ridiculously good.
Yeah.
I mean, they know their keys, they play their keys. And like we talked about the week before, it's a matter of them being disciplined and knowing what they're doing. And they did that. I mean, as I
They're
recall,
a very no-nonsense team, aren't
Yeah,
they?
kind of.
And just like Talbert's a no-nonsense coach, they execute.
I think they gave up 100 and I think it was like about 129 yards total offense to Thorndale last week. And two of those, one was on a 27-yard touchdown pass that was well covered. The kid from Thorndale, I mean, I can't remember who it was, but I'll give him credit. He made an outstanding catch to pull that in for the touchdown. It was just a great play on his part. And Holland was right there. And the second was a 25-yard run right before the half when Holland was like, we don't care what you do. We're just not going to let you score. Yeah. So that's 52 yards right there of 129. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, Holland, 144 yards per game that they're giving up. That's just
They've only allowed 55 points all season.
Yeah. And
6 games. I mean, that's less than 10.
I don't see anybody in this district beating them.
No.
I mean, they've already gotten Hearn out of the way. They've gotten Thorndale out of the way. Thrall loses to Hearn, so you think. I mean, and remember, Holland beat Hearn without Clay Cooper, their best player. Yeah. So.
Well, and they kind of touched on it in your story after the game about they know what's going on, but they're just thinking about the next game. They're thinking about Marlin and what to do this week, not what to do a month from now or whatever else.
They're like the 85 Bears of Bell County.
Yeah.
Those guys are probably pretty old right now.
If they put out a weird video, then
oh wait,
definitely would be.
You haven't seen it on YouTube?
Oh, is it already up?
They're not here looking for trouble.
Yeah, they're very. Holland's very just, we're focused week to week. I think they kind of learned their lesson from last year's playoffs. I think, Greg, you mentioned that in your tab preview story. Got caught kind of looking ahead instead of focused on here and now. But the thing that strikes me with Holland defense is that you don't really have a guy or two that's just, absolutely crushing it. I mean, it's just an entire unit where they just, it doesn't matter where you throw it, where you run it, what your scheme is, how you plan to attack them. I mean, they're just prepared. They're ready. They're experienced. They've got more than enough just talent as well as just experience, like I said. And I don't think they're intimidated by anybody.
No, they have no reason to be.
Right,
really,
yeah.
But one thing to look for with their coach, Brad Talbert, is, he's been at Holland for a pretty good amount of time now. He's a really good coach. And, I think this senior group they have right now is kind of one that he's been wanting to see on out, all the way through graduation. I wouldn't be real surprised if he's not in for some serious jobs in the off season. I don't want to, interview for him or anything, but I think he's the kind of coach that bigger schools will be interested in, and he's proven he can do a really good job offensively, defensively.
Right.
Kids are disciplined. once this great senior group has graduated, I'd be surprised if he's not potentially coaching somewhere bigger at a good program next year.
I mean, he definitely was. I mean, he talks about this group of seniors all the time.
Yeah.
And they are pretty solid. I mean, he's got there's still some youngsters at the program that may be coming up. But you may be right. But one thing that Holland, I think, does have to focus on is penalties, because I think they had 14 for 130 yards. I mean, Thorndale only had 11 first downs, and over half of those were because of Holland's penalties.
They're like the old Miami Hurricanes against Texas in the Cotton Bowl.
You just have a team for everything, don't you?
Oh, what is
Are they the Bears or the Hurricanes?
When you have more penalty yards than you give up yards to the opposing offense, that's the U.
Holland is like the Bears, the Hurricanes, the Islanders.
Hey, I replaced musical references with the old school football references.
True. We're getting closer to on track here. So,
Well, before we close up shop here, Granger opening district this week with Iola. Granger got back on track after losing 2 in a row. And then Idle this week, Salado picked up a big win last week over Robinson. I mean, that was pretty massive for their
big win.
Proved us all wrong on the
Yeah, they really did. Yeah, they really did.
I wouldn't be
with
surprised
the defensive effort. Was that you?
Yeah, I was there.
Yeah, I mean, Robinson, you said, gained a whole bunch of yards, but they turned it over, which is, credit to Salado's defense. But that was a big win for the Eagles over there, because, I mean, as we've mentioned before, that district is quite a hike moving forward. So now Salado 1-1 in that district.
What about the turnovers in that game?
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what he was referencing. I mean, just
six turnovers for Robinson.
Six turnovers. I think they forced turnovers on maybe 3 of Robinson's first 4 drives, and they were able to kind of capitalize those and turn it into points. But yeah, I mean, Salado had a real strong showing 2 weeks ago at Waco Connolly. I think they're now ranked number 1, perhaps. I'm not sure, but they're having a great year. Almost got the win on the road there, and then to come home, the hope is that after a good showing like that, you come home and you don't just lay an egg, and that you're able to kind of ride the momentum. And they did just that. They got the turnovers. Robinson would drive the ball, and they did score. They mounted a late comeback there, a late comeback attempt. Just came up short. Robinson has a really talented dual threat quarterback, big part of what they do. But again, Salado was able to get the turnovers. They were able to get the stops when they needed to, and at the very end, like they always seem to find, they got a big run from one of their 3 big running backs, Hunter Turk, ripped off a 60-plus yard touchdown there at the end to kind of seal the deal. So, I mean, Salado's rolling. I think we had a lot of questions about them, but they seem to be rolling and doing what they need to.
The other team...
Good hair night.
Yeah.
Good hair night.
The other team rolling that's off this week is Rogers, 6-0 now after pummeling Burton last week, 45-7. Rogers has scored twice as many points as it's given up. They open district next week against Hamilton, perhaps the district's second best team.
That'll be.
You don't really know when that.
They hammered Fremont last week. Hamilton did, so that shows you something.
Hamilton's 5-1. They look like they're playing pretty well. Only giving up 116 points this season. Not scoring quite as much as Rogers, but that'll be a good matchup next week. So the Eagles going to take a 6-0 record into district. But that's all I had. I just kind of want to mention that Rogers there. I mean, they're
rolling,
having a great season.
We mentioned how Belton probably a good time for the open date. Bodies filled up.
Yeah, that's their main thing and fix some of the holes on defense too. I mean, you can't.
It was nice to see them use their some of their off time this week to do some special needs.
Yeah, the camp champion they had.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, 20 special needs children spent an hour with Belton football players and cheerleaders going through some passing, catching, all that stuff. It looked like a real nice event, and they do that for track and field, I believe, already, and they're thinking about doing it for basketball. So a good way to kind of get involved with the community.
And a good time for some perspective coming
for
off.
sure.
Probably feeling down in the dumps because you lost a rivalry game, but in the grand scheme, it's just a football game here.
Yeah, and that's how they, both teams approach that anyway. So.
It's just a game.
Yep, exactly. And this is just a podcast, and we're going to end this podcast right now, I think. Unless, Daniel, you know what? Let's do some stats.
Do we want to do some
Sure.
stats?
Might as well.
Are you sure?
It's like names in the paper,
I am.
just on a podcast.
I mean, we're encroaching,
The
curfew,
85
but we can
Bears
still
rushed
do it.
for.
That's true.
We're not doing any obscure references.
Willie Golf.
All right. So here are your area rushing leaders so far this year. Nathan Quattlebaum out of Bruceville Eddy, 1,200 yards rushing, 16 touchdowns on the year. Zach Rabachik out of Troy, 1,019 yards, 15 touchdowns. Clay Cooper out of Holland, 825 yards, 11 scores. Carlos Reyna, a big part of what Granger does this year, 789 yards, 14 touchdowns. Charlie Hudson out of Central Texas Christian, 723 yards, 10 touchdowns. The Lions are back in it after being off last week. And then wrapping it up is Rourke Brown out of Salado. He's got 672 yards and 10 touchdowns on the year.
That was awesome.
Thanks, man. I try. Greg?
Three-headed rushing attack from Salado.
There you go. See,
That'd be kind of scary to actually see a three-headed attack.
it would definitely make the paper, so be sure to buy.
What an offense with interchangeable parts year to year.
Yeah.
It's always going to be three dudes.
Yeah.
Faces change. They still do the same thing.
Same thing.
Every single year.
Now to your area passing leaders. Jace Robinson out of Rockdale, 1,508 yards, 21 touchdowns on the year.
Pretty impressive, too. Only one interception on 98 pass attempts.
Yeah, that's a pretty good ratio. Braden Brashear out of Cameron Yo, 1,289 yards, 16 scores. Jerry Cephas out of Academy, he might be out for the year. We'll see what happens on Friday. 1,020 yards, 12 touchdowns. Vance Willis from Temple, 1,050 yards, 12 touchdowns. Ruben Jimenez out of Belton, 1,016 yards, 11 touchdowns. And then wrapping it up is Aaron Rodriguez from Jarrell, 936 yards and 9 touchdowns so far this year.
Nice numbers there.
No, we don't give kickers a whole lot of love, although you wrote a feature about one.
did.
But I was going to mention Aaron Wagaman, the junior kicker from Temple, 12 points last week against
Yeah.
Belton. I mean,
Yeah.
9 extra points and a field goal. But that's a lot of points
Is that good?
for a kicker,
Is that
12
good?
points.
It's solid.
That's good.
Just saying.
Now your yards receiving leaders.
Who's the kicker on the 85 Bears? I'm trying to remember. Kevin Butler, I think. Go ahead, Dan.
Greg. Oh my God. Keyshawn Raven out of Rockdale. He leads all receivers with 629 yards and 7 touchdowns.
We're going to put Greg in the corner of doom in a second.
Braden Lilly from Academy, 573 yards and a trio of touchdowns. Quentin Johnston from Temple, 473 yards and 5 touchdowns. Joseph Crathers out of Jarrell, he's having a strong year, 470 yards and 4 touchdowns. Zachorian Spikes out of Cameron Yo, 469 yards, 3 touchdowns. And another Mr. Cameron Yo, Kobe Young, 469 yards as well, except he has 6 touchdowns on the year.
Awesome. Talk to everybody next week.
See ya.
Peace.